Have you ever wondered what really went down with Angelo Bruno and the Irishman? It's not just about who pulled the trigger. There's so much more to unpack here. Was it raw ambition that did him in? Maybe someone he trusted turned their back on him. Or was this just how things end up in the mob world? Scorsese doesn't just give us a history lesson. He pulls back the curtain on what makes the mob tick, showing us how power and loyalty dance their dangerous dance. Let's talk about Angelo Bruno himself, brought to life by Harvey Keitel's masterful performance. Here's a guy they called the Gentle Don. Imagine that, a gentle mobster? He was old school to his core, preferring to talk things out rather than let bullets do the talking. Pretty unusual for a mob boss, right? The Irishman isn't really his story. The movie, based on I Heard You Paint Houses, is more interested in Frank Sheeran and the whole Jimmy Hoffa mystery. Bruno's end? It gets boiled down to one brutal caption. Shot in the head sitting in his car outside his house. Short and brutal, but man, does that tell you everything about how dangerous the mob life really is. One scene cuts straight to Bruno's essence. Frank Sheeran sits across from him, the tension thick enough to choke on, while Bruno calmly dissects a bombed laundry business. You know who owns the Cadillac linen service, he asks? Cool as ice. When Frank admits he had no clue, Bruno drops the bomb. I do. Then comes the kicker. Whispers didn't tell you it was the Jew mob? No yelling, no threats, just this quiet power that makes your skin crawl. That's Bruno in a nutshell. Why throw punches when words can hit harder? You know how Scorsese loves his details, right? The way he uses those captions to introduce mob figures and their often messy endings isn't just for show. It's like he's connecting all these little dots, and Bruno's death is just one part of the bigger picture about loyalty and how nobody lives forever in this world. While we don't actually see Bruno get killed, you can feel how his death sends shockwaves through the Philly crime family. The guy played it safe, especially when it came to drugs, but sometimes playing it safe creates its own kind of danger. The real story behind Bruno's murder reads like a Greek tragedy, with Frank the Barracuda Sindone playing one of the leading roles in this fatal drama. The made man wasn't just another street thug. The ruthless criminal had climbed the ranks of the Philly mob through a mix of cunning and brutality. They called the menacing figure the Barracuda for a reason. Sindone was known for his aggressive business tactics and his hunger for more power. While Bruno wanted to keep things steady and traditional, the calculating mobster saw dollar signs in the drug trade that Bruno had forbidden. But Sindone wasn't working alone. The betrayal cut deepest when it emerged that Bruno's own Consigliere, Antonio "Tony Bananas" Caponigro, was the mastermind behind it all. As the trusted advisor who sat in on every major decision, this right-hand man knew all the family's secrets and wielded that knowledge like a weapon. The ambitious Consigliere had convinced himself and Sindone that the New York Commission, the big bosses of the five families, had secretly approved Bruno's hit. It was the kind of fatal miscalculation that gets you killed in the mob world. On March 21, 1980, their plan unfolded. Bruno was sitting in his car outside his house on Snyder Avenue in South Philadelphia, probably feeling safe in his own neighborhood. That's when it happened. A shotgun blast through his car window. The Gentle Don's era ended in that moment. But for the conspirators, their problems were just beginning. See, they'd made the deadliest mistake in the mob playbook, killing a boss without real commission approval. The response was swift and brutal. The commission summoned the treacherous advisor to New York, supposedly for a meeting. What Tony Bananas found instead was a death sentence. They tortured him for hours, making an example of what happens to traitors. When they found his body in the Bronx, it was barely recognizable. Beaten, stabbed, and stuffed with bills in his mouth, throat, and pockets. It was the mob's way of saying, this is what happens when greed makes you break the rules. Sindone didn't end up any better. Just 10 days after his co-conspirator's body was found, they discovered the Barracuda in a Philadelphia alley. 3 bullets in the head, mob style. Some say it was Philip Testa, Bruno's underboss, who arranged these hits, working with the commission to avenge his old friend and boss. Others point to New York family representatives who came down to Philly to handle the cleanup. Either way, the message was clear. You don't kill a boss without permission, and you definitely don't lie about having it. After Bruno bought it, everything went down in Philly's underworld. Sure, Bruno was conservative, but he kept things steady. Once he was gone, it was like someone kicked over an anthill. The guy who came in after him, Philip Chicken Man Testa and Nicodemo Little Nicky Scarfo, turned the city into a war zone. It just shows you what happens when someone like Bruno isn't around to keep the peace anymore. Even though Scorsese doesn't spend much time on all this in The Irishman, that one caption about Bruno's death speaks volumes. It's like a reminder that in the mob world, it doesn't matter how smart or careful you are. Nobody's safe forever. So what's the takeaway here? Maybe Bruno's story shows us what happens when you can't or won't change with the times. His old school ways might have worked for years, but the world was changing and his rivals were getting restless. Then again, maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe it just shows how the mob is like a snake eating its own tail. Betrayal after betrayal, power grab after power grab. The Irishman leaves us wondering, was Bruno too principled for his own good, or was he just another victim of the mob's endless appetite for power? Like most things in this world, the truth probably lies somewhere in the shadows.